We had a massive magnitude 5.1 earthquake strike North Carolina today. There were foreshocks yesterday and four aftershocks after this massive 5.1 today. It struck about 8 o'clock this morning. The officials there have declared a state of emergency. They expect aftershocks of about 3.5 magnitude as well. As you can see here on the map, North Carolina has magma underneath. You see that red spot with yellow around it? This is a map of magma areas in North America. Unfortunately, it did not show the mid-continental rift magma. This is what you see there around the Great Lakes, that beige-looking horseshoe-shaped thing. That's magma under there, and the western arm goes into Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, and then swings west towards New Mexico, Arizona. And the geologists don't know where that magma is coming from, but that magma has been there for about 880 million years. Very old magma, and that's what's causing the continent of North America and the United States just to spread out. Now, this quake that we had in North Carolina, as we know, it has magma under it. This is one of the cracks that we have in Pennsylvania, an ancient crack caused by, of course, an ancient earthquake. You can understand how big these earthquakes can get. We will look at the map, but first I want to tell you about the earthquake, the powerful 5.1 that shook today. USGS officials Sunday afternoon estimated there was a 45% chance for aftershocks of magnitude 3 or greater in the upcoming week. The estimates for another quake magnitude 5 or greater are much lower than 1%, but who knows? We can only tell after the fact. Let's remember the 6.4 in Ridgecrest came before the 7.1. We expect, they say there to be aftershocks after the earthquake of this size, and of course there have been, and we'll see that on the map. There's been about 4 shocks, about 5 aftershocks up to now, 5.1 that struck out of nowhere. Now, they said we expect there to be aftershocks after an earthquake of this size. Researchers will study the event, which could inform policy recommendations for building codes, infrastructures, and other safety measures. He said it's telling us a damaging earthquake is possible, and there has been a lot of damage on houses. They've buckled down, plasters falling out. People said you knew right away it was an earthquake. USGS says reports are coming in around the greater Charlotte region, as far as Augusta, Georgia, as far north as Virginia, and we'll see that on the shake mag. I wouldn't be surprised if northern Florida felt it, and even New York. Now, while some expressed dismay online at sleeping through the big event, and they didn't feel it that much, there were those who knew it was an earthquake, that it said it shook them out, and that it shook for about 10 seconds. They said, we know it was an earthquake right away. There was no question about it. They have seen pictures of damage nearby on social media, checking friends and neighbors. As we said before, I'll leave a link below. You can, on Charlotte Observer, you can see some pictures of exterior damage on houses. The brickwork has to be redone. It's buckled up. People in the area of Sparta reported strong shaking. It was 2.2 miles deep, and 5.2, USGS says 5.1, take your pick. It's the strongest North Carolina earthquake in 104 years. In fact, it's the strongest earthquake to hit the state since 1916, according to National Weather Service, and they have it at a 5.2 magnitude, striking near Skyland, just outside of Asheville. Sparta is an Allegheny County town of about 1,800 people, 100 miles north of Charlotte, North Carolina, and people in the immediate area. Sparta reported strong shaking, as we said. Expected aftershocks are already occurring, and we'll take a look at that as well. So here we are at Sizewell Berkeley, and the yellow the spots are the earthquakes that we had yesterday. These were, of course, foreshocks. and shallow earthquakes of small magnitude. And who would have thought that this area would have been hit by 5.1? There we go, 3.7 kilometers, 2.2 miles down, North Carolina. And these red, blue are the aftershocks that we've had after the 5.1. And let's pull out so you can understand where our area is. There we go. Appalachian Mountains, West Virginia, Appalachian Plateau. And let me show you. Okay, this is where we saw that horseshoe-shaped area. This is all magma underneath. All this is magma underneath. The western arm goes through Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. Okay, that horseshoe shape goes that way. And there's Kansas, as we said before, in the Kansas quakes that we saw, there's at least 15 old volcanoes there, which are kimberlite volcanoes, and they are diamond spewing volcanoes. They spew diamonds and precious gems, and they are very explosive because they have a lot of gas underneath that has to be let out. And it could be that people living there that feel their houses shaking, feel booms underneath their houses. It could be that they could be earthquake gases, volcanic gases that have to escape, and you feel that trembling underneath because there's magma under there. This is a rift zone, the mid-continental rift. The Keweenaw Fault, as we said, is 880 million years old. It's about 1 billion years old. One of the oldest mantle plume magma areas of the world is right here, the Superior Fault. And okay, that horseshoe shape, the west goes here, the east goes here. The eastern one goes down here along the new Madrid seismic fault, which is which is a rift valley. And basically the United States is splitting into three. This part here going sloughing off this way, then the middle section here, and then the western section there. Lake Superior was closer to Wyoming at one point. It stretched out. Okay, so there's magma under here. This is our area right here, North Carolina. And as you can see, it's right between Florida and New York. And you'll see on the shape map what's taken place. Over 100,000 people have reported this to USGS. So hundreds of thousands more obviously have felt it. Now, not everybody who feels it reports it. This is our shake map. Of course, USGS cuts the zone here. But if you extrapolate those lines, I'm sure they felt it in Florida and even up to Philadelphia, New York. Let's go. Aerial. Okay. There we go. That's the Keweenaw Fault. That's the mid-continental rift. Nobody talks about that. That's full of magma under there. Geologists don't know where that magma is from, but there's a mantle plume there that's full of magma, and that was there about 1 billion years ago. And this is what's causing the stretching here between Wyoming and Superior. And that's the horseshoe-shaped thing. That's the western area of it. The eastern area goes around the this area here of the mid-continent New Madrid seismic zone. Just because you don't have a coastline there does not mean that you don't have magma there. There is magma there. And that's a rift zone. That's where you have all these, the rivers, the Mississippi here, the St. Lawrence here, those two lakes, Erie and Ontario. This area has very, very small part to split before it sloughs off. So this 5.1, that's out of nowhere. That's, in my book, I'm not a geologist, but that's very worrying because as we know, earthquakes beget earthquakes. They could also dislodge other fault areas. Okay, so if you extrapolate these lines, obviously it doesn't take long to get into Manhattan, Long Island. The same thing with Florida. Okay, and we do have this thing here, as you know. This is the East Coast submarine volcanoes, 30 of them. East Coast submarine volcanoes pointing towards Maine. Maine has 5 volcanoes under there. Those beautiful, beautiful lakes that we see in New England are all volcanic lakes. They're craters of volcanoes, ancient volcanoes, right here. This, at one point, was a supervolcano. This thing here, around Quebec, is a series of Yellowstone caldera volcanoes, right here. And nobody talks about that. Who cares? I mean, there's, the whole of Canada only has 30 million people. So, not many people talk about the Canadian geology. But this is Finger Lakes. This is the Great Lakes. This is a rift valley. And this is the New Madrid Rift Valley, it should be called. So this is very worrying. And about 100,000 reported feeling it. Now, since 1776, people living inland in North and South Carolina and adjacent parts of Georgia and Tennessee have felt small earthquakes and suffered damage from infrequent larger ones. The largest quake in the area, 5.1, occurred 1916. Moderately damaging earthquakes strike the inland Carolinas every few decades, and smaller earthquakes are felt about once a year or two. Earthquakes in the central and eastern U.S., although less frequent than in the western U.S., are typically felt over a much broader region. That's because the sediment there is much softer. East of the Rockies, the earthquake can be felt over an area as much as 10 times larger than similar magnitude earthquakes on the west coast. A magnitude 4 eastern U.S. earthquake typically can be felt as many places as far as 60 miles from where it occurred, and infrequently causes damage near its source. Magnitude 5.5, about 300 miles. That's just about area. This is the limit about now. 300 miles from where it occurred. Sometimes causes damage as far away as 25 miles. Earthquakes everywhere occur on faults within bedrock, usually miles deep. Most bedrock beneath the inland Carolinas was assembled as continents collided to form supercontinent about 500 to 300 million years ago, rising the Appalachian Mountains. Most of the rest of the bedrock formed when the supercontinent rifted apart about 200 million years ago to form what are now the northeast United States, the Atlantic and Ocean and Europe. At well-studied plate boundaries like San Andreas and fault system in California, often scientists can't determine the names of specific faults that are responsible for an earthquake. In contrast, east of the Rockies, this is rarely the case. The inland Carolinas reaches far from nearest plate boundaries, which is the center of the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. The region is laced with known faults, but numerous smaller or deeply buried faults remain undetected. Okay, but going into the area, 100, 300 miles, 100, 200, 300 miles, yeah, it must have been felt, but it was 8 o'clock in the morning, so people were still sleeping, I would imagine, Sunday morning. Not many people get up that early to go to church. Okay, so, and even up to Florida. Now, let's go in to see some rivers. Wherever you have rivers, remember, wherever you have rivers, you have fault lines. Okay, well, you can understand. They have beautiful lakes and rivers there. Let's take the shake maps out. Okay. They're everywhere, as you can see. Oh, okay, there's a river there, it looks like. Okay, another one there. Look at that meandering river right there. Okay. Lakes and rivers over here. You can see that. So these are all these are fault lines. The rivers, as we know, are fault lines. They are low-lying, and that's where the cracks is, that's where the water goes. That's it right there. It's another river. Going this way, you can see the meandering right there. Where's it going to? Who knows? But you can get my drift. More lakes here. Look at that. Okay, that's another area of rivers. Okay. Another one here. Others here. This whole area here. And of course, they're draining into the ocean. And a lot of these areas, they have found methane volcanoes here on the east coast, around here, off the Carolinas. they have found methane volcanoes, just like they have found here. Look at this. This must be part of the East Coast submarine volcanoes, looks like. Yes, that's Cape Cod. Yeah, these are the submarine volcanoes. Okay. Isn't that strange? Look at this formation here. Okay, so that's off Florida. Okay, so this is very worrying, and we do have magma under California, under North Carolina, as I showed you in the initial map. So all of you there, please be very careful. We have had they take them off. We have had Maine and Quebec earthquakes as well. But the thing is that they take them off after a week, so you don't see them there. Maybe we've even had around the Philadelphia, New York, upstate New York, Rhode Island, Boston area, earthquakes these past few months as well. Earthquakes which have been felt, which are not really at all common there. So we have to be aware that we have to be alert of earthquakes, especially this thing could have jolted other faults on the eastern seacoast. After the hurricane, the tropical storm Isaias, and you have the coronavirus pandemic, and now you have this coming up. So all of you there, please be very careful. Thank you for your support. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.